The arrogance of conquest. The War Council of the Vrexian Empire gathered in the crystalline command chamber of their flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Supreme Commander Zalthar stood before the holographic display of a small blue planet, his 4 eyes gleaming with contempt. "This world calls itself Earth," he announced to his officers, his mandibles clicking in what passed for Vrexian laughter. Population, 8 billion. Technology level, primitive. Military capability, laughable. His chief strategist, Kelrin, pulled up data streams across the hologram. "They still use chemical propulsion, Commander. Their most powerful weapons are fission-based explosives. By our standards, they're in their infancy." Zalthar's scaled hand swept dismissively through the projection. "We've conquered 47 worlds. Most surrendered within days. Those who resisted lasted weeks at best." He turned to face his council, his voice dripping with confidence. "This Earth will fall in 72 hours. I'm being generous." The Vrexian Empire had built its dominion on a simple principle: overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Their plasma weaponry could level cities. Their shield technology rendered most primitive weapons useless. Their ground forces, the Vrexian shock troops, were genetically enhanced warriors trained from birth. "What of their global divisions?" asked General Thrace, the commander of ground operations. "Our intelligence shows they're fractured into nearly 200 separate nations. They fight among themselves constantly." "Even better," Zalthar replied. "A divided enemy is a defeated enemy. While they debate and argue, we'll strike at their major population centers. Once their leadership is eliminated, the rest will submit." Kelrin projected images of Earth's military forces: aircraft carriers, tanks, soldiers with rifles. The council chamber filled with the chittering sound of Vrexian amusement. "Look at them," one officer said. "They still march on the ground like insects. They wage war with metal tubes that fire solid projectiles." "Assign this conquest a Category 3 difficulty," Zalthar commanded. "Deploy minimal forces. We'll need our main fleet for the Andromeda sectors." As the council dispersed, only Kelrin remained, studying the data. Something in the reports nagged at him. Earth's history was saturated with warfare. Thousands of conflicts spanning millennia. They had a word in dozens of their languages that translated roughly to total war. "Commander," Kelrin said carefully, "perhaps we should review their historical records more thoroughly. This species has been in continuous conflict for their entire recorded history." Zalthar waved away the concern. "That just means they're good at killing each other. It won't help them against us." He gazed at the blue planet rotating slowly in the hologram. "Begin the invasion at dawn. By sunset, Earth will be ours." The Eternal Dominion and its supporting fleet of 30 warships moved into high orbit. Below them, Earth spun peacefully, unaware that in mere hours, the Vrexian Empire would attempt to add humanity to its long list of conquered species. What Zalthar didn't know, what his intelligence had failed to capture, was that humanity's fractured nature wasn't a weakness. Throughout their violent history, humans had learned something the Vrexians never had to face. They had learned how to fight when victory was impossible. They had learned how to turn every rock, every building, every inch of ground into a weapon. They had learned that when pushed to the edge of extinction, when given the choice between submission and death, humans would choose to make their enemies bleed. The Vrexians were about to discover what 8 billion angry primates could do when someone threatened their home. They were about to find out why Earth had never been conquered. They were about to learn the meaning of the word, Hal. First blood. The invasion began at 0600 hours GMT. Vrexian assault carriers screamed through Earth's atmosphere over 12 major cities simultaneously: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Sydney, Cairo, Mexico City, and Paris. The plan was simple and had worked on every other world: decapitate the leadership, shatter the military command structure, and force immediate surrender. Captain Marcus Webb of the United States Air Force was 2 minutes into his morning coffee when the alarms shrieked. He sprinted to his F-35 at Edwards Air Force Base, where the California dawn was painted with streaks of fire as alien ships burned through the sky. "This is not a drill," the radio crackled. "All aircraft scramble. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces." Marcus's hands moved through the startup sequence with practiced precision, but his mind was racing. Unknown hostile forces. The words felt surreal. Yesterday's briefing had been about potential tensions in Eastern Europe. Nobody had mentioned aliens. His fighter roared into the sky along with 24 others. The radar was going insane, tracking hundreds of bogies moving at impossible speeds. "Go Squadron, this is command," the radio barked. Multiple unknown aircraft approaching Los Angeles. Civilian evacuations in progress. You are weapons free. Repeat, weapons free. Marcus saw them as his squadron crested the mountains. The Vrection fighters were sleek, organic-looking craft that moved through the air like sharks through water. They were already strafing the highways leading out of LA, targeting the fleeing civilians below. Something cold and hard settled in Marcus's chest. All Ghost Squadron engage at will. He locked onto the nearest alien fighter and fired. The AM-120 missile streaked away, its contrail like a white finger pointing at death. The alien craft tried to evade, but the missile was faster. It exploded in a ball of orange fire. Splash 1. Marcus shouted, then immediately banked hard as return fire seared past his canopy. Green plasma bolts that superheated the air left glowing trails where they passed. The dogfight was chaos. The alien fighters were faster and more maneuverable, but they flew like they'd never faced real opposition. They made mistakes, got cocky, flew into each other's fire lanes. Marcus and his squadron exploited every error. But they were outnumbered 10-1. Ghost 7 is hit, someone screamed over the radio. Marcus caught a glimpse of the F-35 spiraling down, trailing black smoke, before he had to focus on his own survival. Meanwhile, on the ground in London, the Vrection shock troops deployed from their dropships in Trafalgar Square. 200 enhanced warriors in powered armor, each standing 8 feet tall, armed with plasma rifles and personal shield generators. Sergeant Yuki Tanaka of the British SAS was supposed to be on leave. Instead, she found herself leading a hastily assembled squad of soldiers, police officers, and 3 civilians who refused to evacuate. They'd set up in the buildings surrounding the square. "Hold fire," she whispered into her radio. "Let them bunch up." The Vrections advanced in formation, confident and contemptuous. They'd done this dozens of times before. Yuki waited until they reached the center of the square. Now. The buildings erupted. RPGs streaked from windows. Hidden IEDs detonated beneath the cobblestones. Sniper fire cracked from rooftops. The Vrections' shields flared and absorbed most of it but not all. 3 aliens went down in the first 5 seconds. The Vrections scattered, seeking cover, returning fire. Plasma bolts tore through brick and stone like paper. But Yuki's people weren't there anymore. They'd already fallen back to secondary positions. "Welcome to Earth," Yuki muttered, triggering another set of charges. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Beijing, a Type 99 tank battalion engaged Vrection walkers in the streets, turning the ancient city into an inferno. In Moscow, Spetsnaz units lured alien troops into the metro, where shields meant nothing and close-quarters combat turned into brutal hand-to-hand fighting. In Mumbai, civilians armed with whatever they could find joined police and military forces, attacking alien positions with Molotov cocktails and improvised weapons. In Sao Paulo, the favelas became death traps where every alley could hide an ambush. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander Zalthar watched the tactical displays with growing disbelief. "What are our casualties?" he demanded. Kelrin's voice was tight. "Over 300 dead, Commander. 800 wounded. We've lost 12 fighters and 2 dropships. In 2 hours?" Zalthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "That's impossible. Their weapons are primitive." "Primitive, yes," Kelrin said quietly. "But effective. And they're fighting like they don't expect to survive. Every soldier, every civilian, they're all engaging. We've never encountered resistance like this on the first day." Zalthar slammed his fist on the console. "Double the deployment. Crush them." But in his chest, something unfamiliar stirred. Something the Vrection Empire's conquest had never faced before. Doubt. The world unites. The UN Security Council meeting lasted 11 minutes. Ambassador Elena Volkov of Russia stood first. Proposal: immediate cessation of all hostilities between member nations. All military resources to be coordinated against the alien invasion. Seconded, said Ambassador James Richardson of the United States. Thirded, added Ambassador Lu Qin of China. One by one, every nation in the chamber raised their hand. No debates. No political maneuvering. For the first time in the UN's history, a resolution passed with unanimous support in under 15 minutes. The news spread across the planet at the speed of light. In the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, soldiers who had spent decades facing each other across barbed wire turned their weapons skyward together. North Korean artillery batteries that once targeted Seoul now provided covering fire for joint defensive positions. In the Kashmir region, Indian and Pakistani forces stopped shooting at each other and started shooting at the Vrection dropships attempting to establish a forward base in the mountains. A Pakistani F-16 pilot saved an Indian Su-30 from an alien fighter, then received a radio message he'd never expected to hear: "Thank you, brother." In Israel and Palestine, the fighting stopped. Not because peace had suddenly broken out, but because something more important than their generations-old conflict had arrived. An Israeli tank commander found himself coordinating with Hamas fighters to defend Gaza City from orbital bombardment. Dr. Sarah Chin was in her laboratory at CERN when the call came. "Dr. Chin, this is General Morrison, U.S. Joint Chiefs. We need every scientist working on countermeasures. Your expertise in energy physics puts you on the priority list." Sarah looked at her research on quantum field manipulation. "Pure theory. Nothing weaponizable." "General, I study theoretical particle physics. I can't build you a weapon." "We don't need more weapons, Doctor. We need to understand theirs. We've captured 3 alien soldiers and 2 of their fighters. We need to know how their shields work, how their plasma weapons function, how to bring down their ships. Can you help?" Sarah grabbed her jacket. "Send me the coordinates." Across the world, similar calls went out. Every physicist, chemist, engineer, and programmer with relevant expertise was pulled into crash programs. Universities became weapons labs. Tech companies opened their doors to military researchers. The entire scientific apparatus of human civilization pivoted toward a single goal: survival. In Tokyo, robotics engineer Kenji Yamamoto stared at the footage of a Vrection walker. The 8-legged war machine had shrugged off tank rounds and missile strikes. But Kenji saw something others missed. The legs articulated in a specific pattern. There was a rhythm to it. "The joints," he muttered. "They're vulnerable between steps." He called the Japanese Self-Defense Force. 6 hours later, specially modified drones carrying shaped charges were being deployed to target walker joints with precision timing. The first walker fell in Osaka, its legs collapsing beneath it, and the footage went viral. Humanity began to adapt. In Australia, Sergeant First Class Zara Okonkwo, an American soldier deployed at Pine Gap, coordinated with Australian Defence Force units to turn the outback into a killing field. They used the terrain, the heat, the vast distances to their advantage. Vrection troops, adapted for their temperate homeworld, struggled in the 110-degree heat while humans who'd grown up in those conditions picked them off from positions miles away. The Vrextions had expected panic, chaos, collapse. Instead, they found coordination, determination, and tactical innovation that accelerated by the hour. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Zalthar reviewed the latest reports with mounting frustration. "They're sharing intelligence globally," Kelrin reported. "Every tactic we used they adapt to within hours. We deployed plasma mines in the Amazon, they now have scanners that detect them. We started night operations in Europe, they've equipped every soldier with thermal imaging. They should be divided," Zalthar said. "Our intelligence showed centuries of warfare between their nations." "They were," Kelrin said softly, "until we arrived." General Thrace entered the command chamber, his armor scorched from a ground engagement in North Africa. "Commander, I'm recommending we pull back from urban combat. We're taking unacceptable casualties. These humans fight like demons in their cities." Zalthar's 4 eyes blazed. "We are the Vrection Empire. We do not retreat from primitives." "With respect, Commander," Thrace said, "these aren't primitives. They're survivors. Every building is a fortress. Every street is a trap. They've been perfecting urban warfare for thousands of years. We haven't." Kelrin pulled up casualty figures. "We've lost 4,000 soldiers in 3 days, Commander. On our easiest conquest we lost 500 in 3 weeks. At this rate, we'll have suffered more casualties on Earth in 1 week than in our last 10 conquests combined." Zalthar stared at the hologram of Earth. The blue planet seemed to mock him now. "Increase orbital bombardment. Target their military production facilities." "They're moving production underground," Kelrin said. "And their civilians are fighting alongside their soldiers. We can't distinguish between combatants and non-combatants." "Then treat them all as combatants," Zalthar snapped. But even as he gave the order he felt it. The thing Vrection commanders before him had never experienced. The thing that would eventually break the Empire's perfect record of conquest. Fear. Not of dying. Vrection warriors didn't fear death. Fear of losing. The tide of war. Week 2 of the invasion brought a revelation that would change everything. Dr. Sarah Chin stood in an underground facility in Colorado, surrounded by the wreckage of a Vrection fighter. The craft's shield generator lay disassembled on her workbench, Its alien technology spread out like the organs of some exotic creature. "I think I've got it," she said into the phone. On the other end, General Morrison's voice crackled with urgency. "Talk to me, Doctor." Their shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern. It cycles through 7 different harmonics every 2.3 seconds. It's brilliant, actually. Makes them almost impossible to predict. Sarah traced her finger over the crystalline matrix at the generator's core. But there's a gap. For 0.04 seconds during each transition, the shield drops to minimal power. Can we exploit that? If we can sync our weapons to fire during that gap, yes. We'd need to develop targeting systems that can track the frequency shift and time the shot perfectly. How long? Sarah did the math in her head. With full resources and collaboration? 72 hours. Maybe less. You have whatever you need. I'm connecting you with every defense contractor, every military lab, and every hacker who's ever cracked an encryption. Make it work, Doctor. Sarah looked at her team of exhausted scientists, engineers from 6 countries working around the clock. We'll make it work. She was right. 68 hours later, the first frequency-synced rounds fired from a modified railgun at a testing facility in Nevada. The Vrection shield collapsed like tissue paper. The data went global within minutes. Weapons manufacturers retooled their entire production lines. Smart ammunition that could calculate shield frequencies and fire during the vulnerable window rolled off assembly lines in the United States, China, Russia, Germany, and Japan. Within a week, every frontline unit had access to shield-piercing rounds. The Vrection's greatest tactical advantage vanished overnight. In the skies over Cairo, Captain Marcus Webb led his squadron against a Vrection bomber formation. His fighter's new targeting system locked onto the lead bomber, calculating, tracking the shield harmonics. The system chimed. Window open. Marcus fired. The missile punched through the shield and detonated inside the bomber's hull. The alien craft disintegrated. All Ghost Squadron shields are down. Light them up. The battle that had been a desperate holding action suddenly turned into a turkey shoot. On the ground in Ukraine, Sergeant Yuki Tanaka's squad advanced through the ruins of Kiev. They'd been pushed back for days by a Vrection armor column. Now, armed with the new munitions, they set their ambush. The Vrection walkers strode into the kill zone, confident behind their shields. Fire, Yuki commanded. The synchronized volley of RPGs, all equipped with frequency-matching detonators, struck simultaneously. All 8 walkers collapsed, their shields failing, their hulls torn open. Yuki's squad moved forward, methodical and professional. They'd learned from weeks of combat. No celebration. No hesitation. Just combat efficiency. The Vrections began to retreat. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, the atmosphere had shifted from confident to desperate. "We've lost orbital superiority over North America and Europe," Kelrin reported. "Their surface-to-orbit weapons are now penetrating our shields." The Crimson Dawn was destroyed over the Pacific. All hands lost. Zalthar stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed Vrection retreats across the globe. How did they adapt so quickly? "They reverse-engineered our technology," General Thrace said. "In less than 2 weeks. Commander, no species has ever done that. The Keltorians took 6 months. The Draxi never managed it at all. These humans are different," Kelrin added. "They don't just fight. They learn. They innovate. They adapt faster than we can adjust our tactics." Zalthar watched another marker blink out. Another ship lost. Recommendations. The silence stretched for a long moment. "Withdrawal," Thrace finally said. "Cut our losses. This world isn't worth the cost." "We've never withdrawn from a conquest," Zalthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We've never faced extinction before," Kelrin replied softly. "Commander, at current casualty rates, we'll lose our entire invasion force in 30 days. Maybe less." Zalthar wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. 23,000 dead. 40,000 wounded. 12 ships destroyed. And the humans were getting stronger while the Vrections grew weaker. "How many worlds have we conquered?" he asked quietly. 47, Commander. "And how many fought back like this?" "None," Kelrin said. "Not even close." Zalthar made his decision. "Begin preparations for withdrawal. We'll extract our remaining forces and—" The alarm klaxon screamed. "Multiple launches detected," an officer shouted. "Surface-to-orbit missiles, hundreds of them, all frequencies matched to our shields. Evasive maneuvers." Zalthar commanded. But humanity had learned another lesson from the Vrections. When you have your enemy on the run, you don't let them leave. The missiles streaked up from Earth, their warheads calibrated perfectly. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as 3 struck its port side. Shields flickered and died. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull. Abandoned ship. Zalthar roared. As escape pods jettisoned from the dying flagship, as the Vrexian fleet scattered and ran for the outer system, as human fighter squadrons pursued them like wolves chasing wounded deer, one thought crystallized in Zalthar's mind. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's weapons or tactics. They'd underestimated humanity's refusal to quit. And that mistake had cost them everything. The hunters become the hunted. The Vrexian fleet's retreat should have been orderly. They were a disciplined military force with centuries of experience. But discipline crumbles in the face of unprecedented disaster. Commander Zalthar floated in the command pod of the crippled Eternal Dominion, watching his fleet scatter. 3 ships had already jumped to hyperspace. 4 more were burning hard for the outer system. 5 were disabled, drifting, their crews evacuating. And the humans were coming. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," Kelrin said from the communication station. "Audio only. Human origin. Put it through." The voice that came through was female, speaking in flawless Vrexian. The translator AI had clearly been working overtime. "Vrexian forces, this is Admiral Patricia Zhao of the United Earth Defense Coalition. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender all remaining military assets and personnel. Any ship attempting to jump to hyperspace will be destroyed. Any ship attempting to land on Earth will be destroyed. You came here looking for an easy conquest. You're going to leave as prisoners. Or you're not going to leave at all." Zalthar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "This is Supreme Commander Zalthar of the Vrexian Empire. You cannot hold us. We will escape and return with 10 times the forces." A pause, then, "Commander, I don't think you understand your situation. We have 23,000 of your soldiers trapped on our surface. We've captured enough of your technology to replicate it. And most importantly, we now know you exist." Another voice joined the channel. Male with a different accent. "This is General Morrison, Commander. Let me be clear. You attacked our home. You killed our people. You thought we'd surrender because you had better weapons. You were wrong about us. Dead wrong. What is it you want?" Zalthar asked. Admiral Zhao's voice returned. "Surrender now and you'll be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your soldiers will be interned humanely. Refuse and we'll destroy every ship in orbit and hunt down every soldier on the ground. Your choice, Commander. But choose quickly. We're done being patient." Zalthar looked at Kelrin. "Can we escape? Possibly. If we sacrifice the damaged ships as a rear guard, some might make it to jump distance. But Commander, they're tracking our hyperspace signatures. They'll know where we're going." General Thrace, his armor cracked and scorched, pulled himself into the command pod. "Commander, our ground forces are surrounded in 18 major pockets. They're out of ammunition, low on power, and the humans are using chemical weapons now. Tear gas and smoke to disable our sensors. They're adapting faster than we can counter." Zalthar felt the weight of command crushing him. He'd led the conquest of 14 worlds personally. Never lost a battle. Never retreated. His service record was flawless. Until Earth. "What happens if we surrender?" he asked. Kelrin pulled up data on human warfare. "Their history shows they usually treat prisoners well, Commander. Better than we do, certainly. But they also show a tendency towards something they call war crimes trials. They may want accountability for civilian casualties." "We followed standard invasion protocols," Thrace said. "Their protocols are different," Kelrin replied. "They have laws about warfare. About protecting non-combatants. We bombarded cities, Commander. They consider that a crime." Zalthar made a sound that was half laugh, half snarl. "They have laws about warfare? That's insane." "Is it?" Kelrin asked softly. "They've fought each other for thousands of years, but they still have rules. Boundaries they won't cross even against their worst enemies. Perhaps that's why they're so good at it. They've thought about it more deeply than we have." The command pod shuddered as another explosion rocked the dying flagship. "Commander, human fighters are approaching," an officer reported. 83 minutes. Zalthar closed his 4 eyes. He thought of his clutchmates, of the empire that had never known defeat, of his own pride that had led him to underestimate these impossible, infuriating, relentless creatures. "Open a channel to all Vrexian forces," he said finally. "All units, this is Supreme Commander Zalthar. Cease hostilities. Power down weapons. Prepare to surrender." "Commander?" Thrace said, shocked. "We lost General." The moment we underestimated them, we lost. The only question now is whether we lose with honor or lose everything. The transmission went out. Across Earth's orbit and on the surface below, Vrexian forces began powering down. Some immediately. Some reluctantly. A few refused and fought to the last soldier, taking humans with them in final defiant stands. But most chose survival over pride. 72 hours later, Commander Zalthar stood in a human military facility in Geneva, Switzerland. He wore no armor, no weapons. Just simple clothing provided by his captors. Across a table sat Admiral Zhao and General Morrison, along with a dozen other human military and civilian leaders. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Zhao said. "We've never had to deal with prisoners from another world before. But we're going to follow our own laws as best we can. You and your forces will be interned. The wounded will receive medical care. We'll provide food and shelter appropriate to your species' needs." "Why?" Zalthar asked. "Why not simply execute us?" Morrison leaned forward. "Because that's not who we are, Commander. You invaded us, yes. You killed 30 million of our people in 2 weeks. But we're not going to become monsters to defeat monsters. If we did that, you'd have won in a different way. However," Zhao added, her voice hardening, "there will be accountability. The soldiers who followed orders will be treated as prisoners of war. The commanders who gave orders to target civilians will face trial. Including you, Commander." Zalthar nodded slowly. He'd expected as much. "I have one question," he said. "How did you do it? We've conquered 47 worlds. All of them fell. What makes you different?" The humans exchanged glances. Finally, a civilian leader spoke. She was older, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her name tag read, Elena Volkov, UN Secretary General. "We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years, Commander. We've perfected warfare in ways you can't imagine. We've fought in deserts and jungles, in frozen tundra and urban sprawl. We've fought with rocks and spears, with swords and arrows, with rifles and bombs and drones. Every generation we get better at it. Not because we want to, but because we have to." She paused, her expression sad. "You thought our divisions made us weak. They made us strong. We learned to fight in every possible way, under every possible condition, against every possible enemy. And when you arrived, when you threatened everything we'd built despite all our conflicts, we remembered something." "What?" Zalthar asked. "That we're all human. And nobody invades humanity's home. The price of victory." 6 months after the invasion ended, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory at MIT, staring at the Vrexian technology spread across her workbench. The shield generator that had started everything was now fully understood, documented, and replicated. Humanity had reverse-engineered everything. Plasma weapons, energy shields, faster-than-light communication, anti-gravity propulsion. In 6 months, human technology had leaped forward by what would have taken a century of normal progress. But Sarah felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Her lab partner, Dr. Raj Patel, entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You should sleep. You've been here for 30 hours straight." "Can't sleep," Sarah said. "Every time I close my eyes I see the numbers. 30 million dead. 70 million wounded. 15 major cities partially destroyed. The economic cost is estimated at $20 trillion. Raj set down the coffee. "We won, Sarah. Against impossible odds, we won." "Did we?" She gestured at the alien technology. "We've got all these new toys now. Better weapons. Better shields. Better ways to kill each other. How long before we're using this technology on ourselves?" It was the question haunting every scientist who'd worked on the crash weapons programs. They'd unlocked incredible power. But power in humanity's hands was a dangerous thing. "The UN is proposing a new treaty," Raj said. "The Unified Defense Accords. All nations would maintain their sovereignty, but alien technology would be controlled by an international body. No nation could militarize it alone. Will it work? I don't know. But it's better than nothing." Meanwhile, in a detention facility in Iceland, Commander Zalthar sat in his cell, reading. The humans had given him access to their historical archives. He'd spent months consuming everything: their wars, their peace treaties, their rise and fall of empires, their technological evolution. He was beginning to understand. Kelrin was escorted into the visiting area. The strategist had been designated as a liaison between the Vrexian prisoners and their human captors. He'd cooperated fully with interrogations, providing tactical and technological data in exchange for better treatment of his soldiers. "Commander," Kelrin said, sitting across from him, The War Crimes Tribunal has set a date. 3 weeks. Zalthar nodded. He'd expected it. What will they charge me with? Ordering attacks on civilian targets. 43 specific instances. The humans are very precise about their accusations. I followed standard invasion doctrine. I know. So do they. They just don't care. Kelrin paused. Commander, I've been talking to their legal experts. If you plead guilty, show remorse, and provide testimony about the Empire's other conquests, they might show leniency. Testify against the Empire? The Empire left us here to die, Commander. When we called for extraction, they declared us rogue elements. We're officially disavowed. We no longer exist in their records. Zalthar felt something like bitter amusement. Of course. The Empire couldn't admit to a failed conquest. Better to pretend it never happened. What do the humans want to know? Everything. How the Empire operates. What other species have been conquered. Where those worlds are located. They're preparing, Commander. They know the Empire might come back. They want to be ready. Zalthar thought about the fleet that would eventually arrive. A larger force, better prepared, more cautious. The Empire wouldn't underestimate humanity again. But would it matter? He'd read about human history. Their world wars. Their Cold War with nuclear weapons pointing at each other for decades. Their constant cycles of conflict and peace. They'd come within minutes of destroying themselves multiple times. Yet they'd survived. Adapted. Grown stronger. Tell them I'll testify, Zalthar said. Not for leniency. But because the Empire needs to know what I learned here. What did you learn? Zalthar gestured at the books surrounding him. That we were fools. We thought conquest was about superior weapons and tactics. But these humans, they understand something deeper. Warfare isn't about technology. It's about will. Determination. The refusal to surrender even when surrender is logical. He picked up a book about World War II. They have a word. Unconquerable. We thought it meant protected by strong defenses. But that's not it. It means a spirit that cannot be broken. A willingness to fight until there's nothing left to fight with, then keep fighting anyway. And you think the Empire should know this? I think the Empire should fear it. Zalthar looked at his former strategist. We conquered 47 worlds, Kelrin. Easy conquests against species that surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. We got soft. We forgot that war is about more than just firepower. What do you think happens now? The Empire will come back. Bigger fleet. Better prepared. And they'll lose again. Because they still won't understand what makes humans dangerous. It's not their weapons or their tactics. It's that they never stop learning. They turn every defeat into a lesson. Every loss into motivation. Across the Atlantic Ocean at the United Nations headquarters in New York, Elena Volkov stood before the General Assembly. The chamber was packed. Every nation present. Even the ones that had been in conflict before the invasion were here, united by shared trauma and shared triumph. Honored delegates, Elena began. 6 months ago we faced extinction. Today we stand not just as survivors but as a united species. The question before us now is simple. What do we do with this unity? She paused, letting the weight of the question settle. We can return to our old ways, our old conflicts, our old divisions. Or we can choose to maintain what we've built. The Unified Defense Accords aren't about giving up sovereignty. They're about ensuring that humanity speaks with one voice when the next threat arrives. And make no mistake, the next threat will arrive. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vrexian Empire has conquered 47 worlds. They're out there and they now know we exist. But more importantly, we know they exist. We know we're not alone. We know the universe is more dangerous than we imagined. Elena pulled up a holographic star map showing the Vrexian Empire's territory. But we also learned something else. We learned that we can win. That humanity, when united, when fighting for our home and our survival, is the most formidable force in the galaxy. She looked across the assembly. The price of our victory was high. Too high. 30 million dead. 70 million wounded. Cities destroyed. Economies shattered. But we paid that price because we had no choice. And we won because we refused to lose. The chamber erupted in applause. The Unified Defense Accords represent our commitment to never be caught unprepared again. To share technology, intelligence, and resources. To maintain a united front against any threat to our species. I ask you now, will you join us in this commitment? One by one, every delegation rose to their feet. The vote was unanimous. A new dawn. 1 year after the invasion. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UEDS Defiant, humanity's first starship. The vessel combined human and Vrexian technology, creating something neither species had built alone. It was faster than any Earth craft had been, tougher than any Vrexian ship, and carried weapons that made both civilizations' arsenals look primitive. Beautiful, isn't she? Admiral Patricia Zhao approached, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the United Earth Defense Space Force. Terrifying is more like it, Marcus replied. We built this in a year. A whole fleet of them. Necessity is the mother of invention. Zhao gazed at Earth below, still healing from the invasion's scars. We're launching in 3 days. First contact mission to the Vrexian Empire's core worlds. You mean first threat mission? Zhao smiled grimly. Diplomacy backed by visible strength. We're going to make sure they understand, Earth is off limits. Forever. You think they'll listen? They'd better. Because we're not the same species they invaded. We're ready now. In Geneva, the War Crimes Tribunal had concluded. Commander Zalther stood in the courtroom as the verdict was read. He'd been found guilty on 38 counts of ordering attacks on civilian targets. The sentence, 20 years imprisonment with possibility of parole after 10. It was lenient by human standards. The prosecutor had argued for life imprisonment. But Zalther's cooperation, his testimony about the Empire's operations, and his genuine remorse had swayed the judges. As guards escorted him out, a human journalist shouted a question. Commander, do you regret the invasion? Zalther stopped, turned. Every day. Not because we lost. Because of what we did. Because of the lives we took. The humans taught me something my empire never did, that there are rules even in war. That honor matters. That the cost of victory can be too high. He paused. I came here thinking humans were primitive. I leave knowing that my empire is the primitive one. You fight with honor even against those who show you none. That's true strength. The statement went viral across human media. Some called it propaganda. Others called it redemption. Most just called it proof that even enemies could learn. Dr. Sarah Chin sat in a conference room with 50 other scientists from around the world. On the screen, Ambassador Lu Chin, no relation, was speaking from the newly constructed Orbital Platform 1. The Science Council has approved your proposal, Dr. Chin. Project Lighthouse is greenlit. Sarah felt relief wash over her. Thank you, Ambassador. We'll begin immediately. After the call ended, Dr. Raj Patel looked at her with curiosity. So we're really doing this? Building a network of deep space monitoring stations. We have to, Sarah said. The Vrexians found us by accident. Who knows what else is out there? If there are other hostile species, we need early warning. Years of warning, not hours. And if there are friendly species? Sarah smiled. Then maybe we make some allies before the Vrexian Empire comes back. Because everyone knew they would come back. The Empire had 47 conquered worlds. They had resources, numbers, and pride. Earth had humiliated them. Eventually they'd seek revenge. But humanity would be ready. In a hospital in Mumbai, Sergeant Yuki Tanaka visited the wounded soldiers she'd fought beside. Some were recovering. Others would never fight again. She sat beside a young private named James who'd lost both legs in the defense of Trafalgar Square. Sarge, James said, managing a smile despite his pain. Did you hear? They're giving us medals. All of us. Medals don't give you your legs back, Yuki said quietly. No. But they remember. Everyone will remember what we did. That matters. Yuki squeezed his hand. Yeah, it does. She thought about all the soldiers across the world. The ones who'd died. The ones who'd survived but carried scars visible and invisible. The civilians who'd picked up weapons when their military needed them. The children who'd lost parents. The parents who'd lost children. Victory had a cost. A terrible one. But it was still victory. At the Vrexian detention facility, Kelrin sat with a group of younger Vrexian soldiers, teaching them human languages and customs. It was part of a rehabilitation program. Some Vrexians would eventually be repatriated to the Empire. Others had chosen to stay to defect, finding something in humanity's culture that their own lacked. Why do humans have so many words for peace? A young soldier asked, struggling with English vocabulary. Because they've spent so much time at war, Kelrin answered. Peace, truce, armistice, ceasefire, détente, reconciliation. Each word has slightly different meaning. Different implications. Different hopes. We only have one word for peace in Vrexian. I know. Because the Empire only understands one kind, submission. But humans understand peace can be negotiated, earned, maintained. It's not just the absence of war. It's something you build. The young soldier looked thoughtful. Will there ever be peace between our species? I don't know, Kelrin admitted. But I hope so. Because if humans can make peace with each other after 10,000 years of warfare, maybe there's hope for the rest of us too. On Mars, at the newly established colony that had been evacuated during the invasion, construction crews were building something unprecedented. A joint human-Vrexian memorial. It would honor both the humans who died defending Earth and the Vrexian soldiers who died following orders they never questioned. The inscription, written in both languages, read, "Here we remember the cost of war and the price of peace. May all who see this remember, there are no winners in war, only survivors." Elena Volkov stood at the construction site, her term as UN Secretary-General almost complete. She'd overseen humanity's transformation from a fractured species to a united one. Not perfectly united, humanity would never be that, but united where it mattered. "What do you think happens next?" her aide asked. Elena watched the Earth rise over Mars's horizon. "We explore. We expand. We prepare. We become a spacefaring civilization for real, not just in our dreams. And we make sure that when the Vrexian Empire or anyone else looks at Earth, they see not a target but a fortress. And if they attack anyway? Then we remind them why they should have left us alone in the first place." Aboard the UEDS Defiant, final preparations were underway. The crew was a mix of nationalities, ethnicities, and backgrounds. Americans working beside Russians. Chinese beside Indians. Europeans beside Africans and South Americans. The invasion had changed everything. Captain Marcus Webb sat in the commander's chair, reviewing the mission parameters. They jumped to the edge of Vrexian space, broadcast a message and jump back. A simple mission. A clear message. His communications officer, Lieutenant Amar Ndour from Senegal, turned to him. "Captain, message from Earth. Secretary-General Volkov wants to speak to you." Elena's face appeared on screen. "Captain Webb, I wanted to wish you luck personally. You're carrying more than just a diplomatic message. You're carrying humanity's declaration that we're not victims anymore. That we're not prey. That we're a force to be reckoned with. Understood, Madam Secretary. We won't let you down. I know you won't. You never have. Fair winds and following seas, Captain." The screen went dark. Marcus looked at his crew. 30 men and women from 15 countries. The best humanity had to offer. All stations report readiness. One by one the stations confirmed. Navigation, plot the jump. Coordinates locked, Captain. Engineering, jump drive status? Charged and ready, Captain. We're good to go. Marcus took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first faster-than-light journey. The first step into a larger universe. All hands secure for jump. Execute in 3, 1, mark. The Defiant folded space around itself and vanished from Earth's orbit. 7 light-years away, it reappeared at the edge of the Vrexian Empire's territory. Alarms immediately sounded on Vrexian patrol ships. An unknown vessel. Human configuration. Armed. The Vrexian fleet commander opened a channel. "Unknown vessel, you are in Imperial space. Identify yourself or be destroyed." Marcus nodded to Lieutenant Ndour. "Send the message." "Transmitting now, Captain." The message was simple, recorded by Secretary-General Volkov herself, translated into perfect Vrexian. "To the Vrexian Empire. 1 year ago you invaded our world expecting easy conquest. You learned otherwise. We do not seek further conflict, but we will not tolerate future aggression. Earth is sovereign. Humanity is united. We have learned from your technology, adapted your weapons, and exceeded your capabilities. This vessel is proof of our advancement. Consider this both a greeting and a warning. Leave us in peace and we will leave you in peace. Threaten us again, and you will face not a divided world of primitives, but a united species that has perfected the art of war over 10 millennia. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. For a long moment there was silence. Then the Vrexian commander responded, his voice careful and measured. "Message received and will be forwarded to Imperial Command. Are you requesting diplomatic relations?" Marcus smiled. "We're requesting nothing. We're stating facts. But if your empire wishes to establish peaceful relations, Earth is willing to listen. On our terms." Another pause. "Understood. Safe journey, human vessel." The Defiant jumped back to Earth. The mission had taken 17 minutes. But it changed everything. 3 months later, a Vrexian diplomatic ship arrived at Earth, flying a white banner of truce. Aboard was a new ambassador, along with an official apology from the Empire and a proposal for a non-aggression pact. The Empire had done the math. Earth was no longer an easy target. It was a threat. And threats, the Empire had learned, were better as allies than enemies. The negotiations took months. There were disputes, arguments, moments when everything almost fell apart. But both sides remembered the cost of war. Both sides had buried too many dead. The treaty was signed on the one-year anniversary of the invasion's end. Earth had survived its first contact with hostile alien life. Not through submission, not through luck, but through the one thing that had defined humanity since its beginning: the absolute refusal to surrender. 5 years later, the Vrexian Empire and Earth were trading partners. Not friends, that would take generations, but partners. Vrexian technology combined with human innovation created wonders neither could have achieved alone. Dr. Sarah Chin, now director of the International Space Technology Institute, stood beside Commander Zalthar, who'd been granted early parole for his continued cooperation. Together, they watched the launch of humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Coming here?" Zalthar was quiet for a long time. "Every day. But I also learned something valuable. Something the Empire never taught me." "What's that?" "That defeat can be a better teacher than victory. That humility matters. That there are species in this universe that are stronger not because of their weapons, but because of their spirit." He looked at Sarah. "Your species was forged in fire. You learned to fight because you had to. The Empire conquered because it was easy. When we finally faced a real challenge, we broke. And now we're learning from you. Slowly. Reluctantly. But learning." He gestured at the ship launching into space. "That vessel carries both our peoples. Working together. Building together. That would have been unthinkable before the invasion." Sarah nodded. "Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering you're not invincible. Keeps you humble. And alive," Zalthar added. The ship cleared the atmosphere and ignited its jump drive, heading for unexplored space. Aboard were humans and Vrexians working side by side, seeking new worlds not to conquer but to understand. Back on Earth, in a classroom in Tokyo, a teacher told students about the invasion. About the day the sky filled with alien ships. About how the world came together. About the soldiers and scientists and ordinary people who refused to give up. One student raised her hand. "Teacher, why did we win?" The teacher smiled. "Because when humanity is pushed to the edge, when we're given the choice between surrender and resistance, we choose resistance. Every time. That's what makes us human. That's what saved us." Another student asked, "Will they come back? The aliens?" "Maybe. Probably. The universe is bigger than we imagined and more dangerous. But we're ready now. And we'll always be ready. Because we learned the most important lesson." "What lesson?" The teacher looked at the children, the future of humanity, and said, "That Earth is not just our home. It's our fortress. And nobody takes our home from us. Nobody." Outside, the sun set on a world that had faced extinction and survived. A world that had been invaded by a galactic empire and sent them running. A world that had proven, beyond any doubt, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was the simple, stubborn, beautiful refusal to quit. The Vrexians had come expecting easy victory. They found hell instead. And in that hell, humanity had forged something stronger than any empire.